The night sky over Hanul was clear. Taiho stood on the observation hill behind his home. His eyes moved from star to star with practiced ease. In his hand, he held a worn notebook. The pages were filled with careful drawings of stars and notes about their movements. Taiho was 32 years old. His black hair was cut short, and his hands were rough from farm work. But his eyes were sharp. They had to be. He was a sky watcher, just like his father and grandmother before him. The harvest. Star is bright tonight, he said to himself. He made a small mark in his notebook. This meant the first planting should begin in 3 days. On Hanul, people lived by the stars. While other worlds in the galaxy used computers and machines to plan their farming, the people of Hanul followed older ways. They watched the sky. They remembered the patterns. They planted and harvested when the stars told them to. This was why Taiho's job was important. He was one of 12 sky watchers who helped guide the farming seasons for the entire northern region. Without them, crops would fail. People would go hungry. Taiho closed his notebook and walked back to his small house. Inside, the walls were covered with star charts. Some were hundreds of years old, passed down through his family. Others were new, drawn by his own hand. Together, they showed how the stars moved over Hanul through the seasons and years. On his table sat a half-finished star map. Taiho worked on it each night after his watching was done. This map was special. It showed how the stars would look 50 years in the future. It would be his gift to the next generation of sky watchers. Taiho made himself a cup of tea and sat down to work on his map. The night was quiet except for the soft scratch of his pen on paper. Then a new light appeared in the sky. At first, Taiho thought it was a shooting star. But it grew brighter, and it didn't move across the sky like shooting stars did. It grew larger. Taiho stepped outside again. The light was now bright enough to cast shadows. Other people in the village were coming out of their homes too, pointing up at the strange light. "What is it?" asked Mina, Taiho's neighbor. She was holding her young daughter's hand. The little girl's eyes were wide with fear. "I don't know," Taiho admitted. In all his years of watching the sky, he had never seen anything like this. The village, Elder Sunho joined them. His face was grim. "It's a ship," he said. "From the Meridian Empire." Taiho had heard of the Meridian Empire. Everyone had. They controlled hundreds of planets across the galaxy. They had visited Hanul once before, many years ago. They had offered to bring new technology, new ways of farming that didn't depend on the stars. The council had politely refused. Hanul was happy with its old ways. "Why are they coming back?" Taiho asked. "They don't come back just to talk," Sunho said. "Get your charts, get your books. We need to go to the library." The village library was the oldest building in the area. Its walls were made of stone and deep below it were rooms built to survive storms and floods. If the Meridians were coming, the library would be the safest place. Taiho hurried back to his house. He gathered his most important charts and books. He couldn't take them all. He had to choose. The oldest ones first, he decided. The ones that couldn't be replaced. His own work he could do again if needed. As he was packing, a low rumble shook the ground. Taiho looked out his window. More lights were appearing in the sky. Dozens of them. Hundreds. He ran to the library with his bag of charts. Other sky watchers were there too, carrying their own books and tools. The village people crowded inside. "The stone building. The council is meeting with them now," Sunho told everyone. "They want our land for mining. They say our farming methods are too slow, take up too much space." "Will the council agree?" someone asked. Sunho shook his head. They refused. They said Hanul belongs to its people, and its ways are not for sale. A cheer went up from the crowd. But Taiho felt uneasy. The Meridian Empire was not known for accepting no as an answer. His fear proved right. The ground shook again, harder this time. Then came a sound like thunder, but louder and longer. The stone walls of the library trembled. "They're attacking," someone shouted. People pushed toward the doors that led to the underground rooms. Taiho was caught in the crowd, struggling to keep hold of his bag of charts. A blinding flash of light came through the windows. The library shook. Part of the ceiling fell in. People screamed. Taiho found himself outside. He wasn't sure how he got there. His ears were ringing. Smoke filled the air. The village was burning. Through the smoke, he saw shapes moving. People, in gray uniforms. They carried weapons. Meridian soldiers. Taiho turned and ran back to the library. He had to save the charts. The knowledge. Without it, Hanul would lose its way. The library was half destroyed, but the entrance to the underground rooms was still there. Taiho made his way through rubble and smoke. He found the heavy wooden door and pulled it open. Inside, many of the villagers were huddled in fear. Sunho was trying to calm them. The star charts, Taiho gasped. Where are they? In the back room, Sunho said. Hurry! Taiho pushed his way through the crowd. The back room was small and dark. It held the oldest and most valuable books and charts of Hanul. Some were over 1,000 years old. He began gathering them into his bag, as many as he could carry. Outside, the sounds of destruction continued. The floor above shook with each blast. Taiho worked quickly. He couldn't save everything, but he could save enough to keep the knowledge alive. He was reaching for the last of the ancient star maps. When the door burst open, 3 Meridian soldiers stood there, weapons raised. Stop right there, one ordered. Taiho froze. The star map was in his hands. It showed the sky over Hanul as it had looked 800 years ago. What are you doing? The soldier demanded. Taiho held up the star map. This is our history, he said. Our knowledge. Please, it can't be replaced. The soldiers looked at each other. Then their leader spoke into a device on his wrist. Commander, we found someone trying to save some old papers from the library. What should we do? There was a pause. Then a voice replied, Bring him and the papers. The commander wants to see them. 2 soldiers grabbed Taiho's arms. The third took his bag of charts. Together they led him out of the library through the burning village, toward a large ship that had landed in the grain fields. As they walked, Taiho looked up at the sky. Smoke covered most of it now, but through a break in the clouds he could see stars. The harvest star was still there, still bright. Taiho memorized its position. Even if they took everything else, they couldn't take what was in his mind. The stars, the patterns, the knowledge of Hanul, he would remember, no matter what happened next. The prison ship was cold and dark. Taiho sat with 50 other prisoners in a large metal room. No windows, no view of the stars, just hard benches and dim lights. 3 weeks had passed since the attack on Hanul. 3 weeks since the Meridian. Commander had looked at Taiho's star charts and laughed. These are worthless, the commander had said. Ancient drawings of stars? We have computers for navigation. We don't need these. But he had not destroyed the charts. Instead, he had them packed away. They might be worth something to collectors, he told his officers. Primitive art always finds buyers. The commander had sentenced Taiho to prison, not because he had fought back, not because he was dangerous, but because he had looked the commander in the eye and said, You can take our world, but you cannot take our sky. Now Taiho was headed to Shadowhold, a prison moon that orbited a large gas planet in a distant system. The journey was long. Every day felt the same. Mealtimes were the only way to mark the passing hours. First time in space? Asked a voice. Beside him, Taiho turned. A man about his age sat there. He was thin with quick eyes and nervous hands that never seemed to stop moving. Yes, Taiho said. First time. I'm Jiho, the man said. Former engineer on Talon Station. Sabotaged a Meridian fuel depot. Bought the workers time to escape before the soldiers arrived. Taiho, Skywatcher from Hanul. Jiho raised an eyebrow. Skywatcher? What did a Skywatcher do to end up here? Taiho told his story. About Hanul, about the stars, about the attack. About trying to save the star charts. So you're here because you tried to save some old papers? Jiho shook his head. The Meridians fear knowledge they don't control. The ship rumbled. The lights flickered. Prisoners looked up in alarm. "Don't worry," Jiho said. "We're entering atmosphere. We're arriving at Shadowhold." The landing was rough. The prisoners were ordered to stand. Guards in heavy armor came in with electric prods and chains. "Single file," a guard shouted. "Any trouble and you'll regret it." They were marched out of the ship into a large hangar. The air was stale. Recycled. Nothing like the fresh air of Hanul. Taiho tried to look around for windows, for any glimpse of the sky. But there were none. The prisoners were processed one by one. Fingerprints taken. Eyes scanned. Prison clothes given out. Gray jumpsuits with numbers on the back. "Prisoner 847, said the processing officer when he reached Taiho. "Crime, sedition and theft of imperial property. Sentence, 20 years. 20 years. The words hit Taiho like a physical blow. 20 years without seeing the sky. Without seeing the stars. After processing, the new prisoners were marched through, long tunnels carved into the moon's surface. The walls were rough stone. The lights were harsh and white. Their footsteps echoed. Shadowhold was a mining operation before it was a prison, Jiho whispered as they walked. They dug too deep. Found nothing valuable, abandoned it. Perfect place for a prison, miles of tunnels, no way out. They came to a large open area with tables and benches. A dining hall. Beyond it were cell blocks, long hallways with small rooms on each side. "Block C cells 800 to 900, announced a guard. "That's you lot, 2 to a cell." Taiho and Jiho were assigned to cell 847. It was small, just big enough for 2 narrow beds, a toilet, and a small sink. The door was solid metal with a small window at eye level. "Home sweet home," Jiho said with a bitter laugh. He sat on one of the beds. "Bottom or top?" "Either is fine," Taiho said. He was still trying to process his situation. 20 years. Would Hanul even exist when he got out? Would anyone remember the old ways, the star watching? "Take the bottom," Jiho decided. "I prefer the top anyway. Better view." "View of what?" Taiho asked. "There's nothing to see." "Exactly. But from up here I can see nothing more clearly." Despite everything, Taiho found himself smiling at the odd joke. A bell rang. The cell door slid open automatically. "Dinner time," Jiho said. "Come on. Food's not good, but you need to eat." The dining hall was noisy. Hundreds of prisoners talking, eating, arguing. Guards stood at the edges of the room, watching. The food was a gray mush that tasted like nothing Taiho had ever eaten before. "You'll get used to it," Jiho said, seeing Taiho's face. "Or you'll starve. Those are the choices." As they ate, Jiho pointed out different groups of prisoners. "Those are the landers, all from the same colony world. Stick together. Those by the wall are the techs, engineers, programmers, scientists who crossed the Empire. And those," he nodded toward a rough-looking group, "are the Rippers. Avoid them. They take what they want." Taiho nodded, trying to remember it all. Prison had its own rules, its own dangers. "What about the guards?" he asked. "Most are just doing a job. Not cruel, not kind, except for Supervisor Dohyun, see him?" Jiho nodded toward a tall guard with a stern face who stood near the entrance. "He runs this section. Fair, by prison standards. Follows rules exactly. No exceptions, but no extra punishment either." After dinner came work assignments. Each prisoner had to work 6 hours every day in the prison's factories or maintenance. Taiho was assigned to the mines. "Not the worst job," Jiho said as they returned to their cell. "Hard work, but the guards don't bother you much down there. Too hot for them." The lights dimmed at what the prison called night. No way to know if it was really night outside. No windows, no sky. Just the schedule set by the prison. Taiho lay on his bed, staring at the ceiling. He felt lost. On Hanul, he had always known his place. Under the stars, reading their patterns, guiding the farmers. Here he was just a number. Prisoner 847. "Can't sleep?" Jiho asked from the top bunk. No, Taiho admitted. I keep thinking about the sky, about the stars. I never realized how much I would miss them. Tell me about them, Jiho said. The stars over your world. What were they like? So Taiho told him. About the harvest star that guided planting, about the winter crown that appeared when snow was coming, about the pathway of 7 stars that pointed to the galactic center. As he spoke, he traced the patterns with his finger in the air above him. He could see them so clearly in his mind, the bright points of light against the darkness. You really love them, Jiho said when Taiho finally fell silent. The stars. They were my life, Taiho said simply. The next day, Taiho went to the mines, for the first time. It was hot, dusty work. Prisoners used hand tools to break rocks looking for any minerals that might be valuable. The guard said there was nothing left worth finding, but the Empire kept the mine going anyway. Busy prisoners caused less trouble. As Taiho worked, sweat dripping from his face, he noticed something in the rock he was breaking, a small piece of stone that glowed faintly. He looked around, no guards nearby. Quickly, he slipped the small deep stone into his pocket. That night, back in his cell, he took out the stone. It was small, about the size of his thumbnail. In the dim light of the cell, it glowed with a soft blue light. What's that? Jiho asked, leaning down from the top bunk. I found it in the mine, Taiho said. It glows. Jiho climbed down for a closer look. Phosphorescent mineral, probably worthless, or they would have mined it all out years ago. But pretty. Taiho looked at the glowing stone, then at the blank wall beside his bed. An idea formed in his mind. Do you think I could find more of these? He asked. Sure. If you know where to look. Different colors too, if you're lucky. Why? Taiho didn't answer right away. He stood up and went to the wall. With the edge of the stone, he made a small mark on the wall, a tiny dot of glowing blue. That, he said, pointing up at the mark, is Hanul's sun. Jiho stared at him, then at the mark on the wall. Slowly, he smiled. You're going to need a lot. More of those stones, he said. Taiho nodded. 1 stone, 1 star. It was a beginning. 1 month passed in Shadowhold, then 2. Taiho worked in the mines every day. His hands grew rough, his muscles ached, but his eyes stayed sharp, always looking for the glowing stones. He found them in different places in the mine. Blue ones were common. Green ones were rare. Once he found a red one that glowed like the harvest star back home. Each time he found one, he hid it carefully and brought it back to his cell. At night, when the prison lights dimmed, Taiho worked on his wall. First, he placed Hanul's sun, then the stars closest to it, then the outer stars. He worked from memory, placing each tiny dot exactly where it should be. How do you remember where they all go? Jiho asked one night as he watched Taiho work. I see them when I close my eyes, Taiho said. I've been watching them all my life. Jiho helped in his own way. He taught Taiho how to crush the stones into powder and mix them with water from the sink. This made a paint that glowed brighter than the stones alone. With this paint, Taiho could make stars of different sizes. The wall beside Taiho's bed slowly filled with stars. One small section of the wall became the sky over Hanul in spring. The glowing dots formed patterns that any skywatcher would recognize. That one there, Taiho pointed to a group of stars, is the farmer's plow. When it rises in the east, it's time to prepare the fields. Jiho had never cared about stars before. On his homeworld, the sky was always covered with clouds from the factories. But now he found himself interested. He asked questions. He learned the names of constellations. Other prisoners noticed too. Word spread about the quiet man in cell 847 who was painting stars on his wall. Some came to see during free time hours. That's not what stars look like, said one prisoner, a big man with tattoos who had never been outside a city. They do on Hanul, Taiho said simply. Another prisoner, an older woman named Yunha, looked at the wall with tears in her eyes. My grandmother was a navigator on merchant ships, she said. She taught me to find my way by the stars. I never thought I would see them again. Slowly, Taiho's small project became something more. Prisoners from different blocks asked to see the stars. Guards heard about it too. Most didn't care. Some were curious. One day, Supervisor Do-hyun himself came to cell 847 during inspection. He stood in the doorway, his face showing no emotion as he looked at the wall of stars. "What is this?" he asked. Taiho stood up straight. "The night sky over my homeworld, sir. You're defacing prison property." "Yes, sir." Do-hyun studied the wall for a long moment. "Does it help you?" The question surprised Taiho. "Sir? Does it help you serve your time? Keep you calm? Keep you from causing trouble?" Taiho thought about it. "Yes, sir, it does." Do-hyun nodded once. "Then continue, but keep it in your cell only. No stars in the common areas." After Do-hyun left, Jiho let out a breath. "That was close. I thought he'd have you scrub it all off." "He's not like other guards," Taiho said. "He asked if it helped me." 3 months into his sentence, Taiho ran out of space on the wall beside his bed. The spring sky was complete, but there was still summer, fall, and winter to paint. The stars, in those seasons, were just as important. "Use my wall," Jiho said, pointing to the wall beside his top bunk. "I don't need it." So Taiho started on the summer sky. The wall beside Jiho's bed slowly filled with new constellations. The hunter, the river, the crown of light that appeared only in the warmest nights. Word spread further. Prisoners began to bring Taiho stones they found in their own work areas. A man who worked in the kitchen found yellow crystals in a cleaning supply. A woman who fixed machines found white stones that glowed in the engine rooms. With these new colors, Taiho's sky became more detailed. He added the colored stars, the red giants, the blue-white young stars, the yellow suns like Hanul's own. One day, a new prisoner arrived in their block. His name was Hyunwoo. He had been a teacher on a world called Terene. He looked at Taiho's wall with wide eyes. "Those are the stars over Hanul?" he asked. "Yes," Taiho said. "How did you know?" "I taught astronomy before the Empire closed our schools. I recognize the patterns. Hanul is in the outer rim near the Whisper Nebula." Taiho felt a rush of excitement. Here was someone who understood stars as he did. Hyunwoo visited often. He and Taiho would talk for hours about stars, about navigation, about the old ways of reading the sky. Jiho listened, learning more than he ever thought he would about the universe above. "In the old days," Hyunwoo said one evening, "before the Empire, people navigated between stars by memorizing these patterns. No computers, no star charts, just knowledge passed down through generations. That's how we lived on Hanul," Taiho said. "We kept the old ways." "The Empire fears that kind of knowledge," Hyunwoo said quietly. "Knowledge they can't control. Knowledge that lives in people, not machines." 6 months into his sentence, Taiho's project grew beyond his cell. With Supervisor Do-hyun looking the other way, Taiho began to paint stars on the ceiling of the cell block hallway. Other prisoners helped. Some held him up to reach high places. Others mixed paints. Others kept watch for guards who might not be as understanding as Do-hyun. The hallway ceiling became the night sky as seen from space, with no planet to block the view. Thousands of stars spreading out in all directions. The great spiral arm of the galaxy arcing overhead. Prisoners would come to the hallway at night when the lights dimmed. They would lie on their backs on the cold floor and look up at the glowing ceiling. For a few minutes they could imagine they were free, floating in space, seeing the universe as it truly was. One night, Supervisor Do-hyun came down the hallway after hours. The prisoners scrambled to their feet, expecting punishment. But Do-hyun just looked up at the ceiling, his face illuminated by the soft glow of 1,000 painted stars. "My home world has no stars," he said quietly. "Too much pollution, too many lights. I've never seen a real night sky." Taiho stood next to him, looking up. "This is how it looks from space. But each world sees a different part of it, from a different Angle. Show me, Do-hyun said. Show me how it looks from your world. So Taiho took him to cell 847. He showed him the walls covered with the seasonal skies of Hanul. He explained the constellations, the patterns, the meanings his people had given to the stars. Do-hyun listened without speaking. When Taiho finished, the supervisor was quiet for a long time. I grew up in the Meridian core worlds, he finally said. We're taught that outer planets like yours are primitive, backward, in need of our guidance. But your people raid the universe in ways we've forgotten. He turned to leave, then stopped at the door. Tomorrow I'm reassigning you, no more mining. You'll work in the prison library. It's quieter there. You'll have more energy for this. He gestured at the wall of stars. After Do-hyun left, Jiho grinned at Taiho. Library duty? That's the easiest work in Shadowhold. Why would he do that? Taiho wondered. Maybe he wants to see more stars, Jiho said. In the library, Taiho found books about astronomy, old books left behind when the mining operation became a prison, books with star charts from different worlds. With these, he could check his memory, make sure his stars were in the right places. As he read, a new idea began to form in his mind. The stars he was painting weren't just memories, they were maps. Maps that showed the way home for hundreds of prisoners. His project was no longer just about remembering Hanul. It was about remembering all the worlds the Empire had taken, all the skies they had dimmed, all the knowledge they had tried to erase. I need more space, he told Jiho that night. More walls, I think, Jiho said with a smile. That can be arranged. 1 year passed in Shadowhold. The stars spread. What had begun in cell 847 now covered walls in 3-cell blocks. Ceilings and hallways glowed with galaxies. Empty rooms became star chambers where prisoners could see the skies of 100 different worlds. Taiho was no longer alone in his work. 20 prisoners now helped regularly. They called themselves the Sky Keepers. Each brought knowledge of their own world's stars. Together they created a map of the galaxy unlike any the Empire had. Jiho led the technical side. He figured out how to make the paints last longer, how to make them glow brighter, how to mix colors to show nebulas and dust clouds. Yunwoo taught astronomy classes in the library. Prisoners who had never looked up at their own skies learned to read the stars, to find their home worlds, to trace paths between systems. Prison officials mostly ignored the project. As long as the prisoners caused no trouble, they could paint what they wanted. Supervisor Do-hyun made sure no one interfered. The warden asked about your star maps yesterday, Do-hyun told Taiho one day in the library. Taiho looked up from his books. What did you tell him? That it keeps the prisoners calm, gives them something to think about besides escape. Do-hyun paused. Is that true? Taiho considered the question. Yes and no. It reminds them of home, of freedom, but it also gives them peace. The stars are patient. They teach us to be patient too. Do-hyun nodded slowly. The warden has approved more. Space for your project. The old storage rooms in Block D, they're not being used. Taiho thanked him, but something in Do-hyun's voice made him curious. Why do you help us? Do-hyun was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I told you I grew up on a core world. No stars, visible. But my grandfather came from an outer planet. He used to tell me stories about the night sky, about navigation by starlight. I never understood why it mattered to him. He looked at Taiho. Now I do. The storage rooms in Block D were large and empty, perfect for Taiho's biggest project yet. A 3-dimensional map of the entire sector with Hanul at its center. Prisoners who worked in maintenance brought metal rods and wires. Those who worked in the textile shop brought thin fabric. Together they built a framework that filled the room. From the metal rods they hung small painted stars at different heights. When it was finished, people could walk through the stars. They could see how the constellations changed when viewed from different angles. How the flat patterns seen from planets were really stars at vastly different distances. Yunha, the older woman whose grandmother had been a navigator, cried when she first walked through the room. This is how she described it to me, she said, like walking among the stars themselves. Word of the star room spread through all of Shadowhold. Prisoners from every block came to see. Guards came too when they were off duty. Even kitchen. Workers and maintenance staff from outside the prison came to look, and they talked. The stars became a common language. Prisoners who had fought each other now discussed astronomy together. Guards who had never spoken to prisoners except to give orders now asked questions about distant worlds. "It's changing things," Jiho said to Taeho one night in their cell. "The stars. They're changing how people think." Taeho nodded. He had seen it too. Stars remind us how small we are, how brief our lives are. It's hard to hold on to anger when you see yourself in that perspective. "The Empire doesn't want people to have that perspective," Jiho said. "They want us to think small, to focus on our own little problems, not to look up and see the whole universe." One day, a new prisoner arrived in their block. His name was Kiwan. He had been an officer on an Imperial ship before being arrested for refusing orders. He looked at the stars with a different eye than most. "These are incredibly accurate," he said to Taeho, as they stood in the three-dimensional map room. "How did you do this with no instruments, no computers?" "Memory," Taeho said, "and books from the library, and the combined knowledge of many prisoners." Kiwan walked through the star field, his hand reaching out to touch the hanging lights. "Do you realize what you've created here?" "A map," Taeho said. "Not just any map. The Empire keeps certain star charts classified, navigation routes, strategic locations." Kiwan turned to face Taeho. "But you've recreated them from memory, from the combined memory of hundreds of prisoners from different worlds." Taeho hadn't thought about it that way. He had been focused on preserving knowledge, on remembering Hanul's sky. He hadn't considered that the combined map might show things the Empire wanted to keep secret. Kiwan pointed to a section of the map. "Look here. These stars form a corridor through the Whisper Nebula, a shortcut between sectors that only Imperial ships are supposed to know about." He moved to another section. "And here, these star clusters mark the boundary of Meridian space. Beyond them are free worlds the Empire hasn't reached yet." Taeho followed him through the room as Kiwan pointed out more patterns. Patrol routes, hidden bases, resource-rich systems. "The Empire destroys worlds that resist," Kiwan said quietly, "like your Hanul. But from these destroyed worlds, you've gathered the survivors. And together, you've recreated a map that shows the Empire's secrets." That night, Taeho lay awake in his cell. The glowing stars on the walls seemed different now, not just memories, not just art, but information. Dangerous information. "What will you do?" Jiho asked from the top bunk. Taeho had told him about his conversation with Kiwan. "I don't know," Taeho admitted. "I never meant to create something that could be used against the Empire. I just wanted to remember. But now that you know?" Taeho was silent for a long time. Then he said, "The stars don't take sides, Jiho. They shine on Empire worlds and free worlds the same. They're not weapons. They're guides. They show the way to those who know how to read them." The next day, something unusual happened. A group of officials from the Meridian Central Government arrived at Shadowhold. They had come to inspect the prison. This had never happened before. The prisoners were confined to their cells during the inspection, but Taeho watched through his window as the officials walked down the hallway. They paused, looking up at the ceiling of stars. One of them, a woman in an expensive uniform with many medals, pointed at the constellations. She seemed angry. The warden, walking beside her, nodded nervously. That evening, Supervisor Do-hyun came to cell 847. His face was grim. "There's trouble," he said without greeting. "The inspection team saw your star maps. One of them was a military officer. She recognized what Kiwan recognized, the strategic information hidden in the patterns." Taeho felt a cold knot form in his stomach. "What will happen?" "They've ordered all the star maps destroyed. By tomorrow morning, everything must be painted over, all your work. All of it." Taeho sat down heavily on his bed. A year of work, A year of memories, to be erased in a single night. But that's not the worst of it, Do-hyun continued. His voice was lower now, almost a whisper. They're also looking for the person who started this, the one who knows the most. They plan to make an example. Me, Tae-ho said. Do-hyun nodded. They'll transfer you to a higher security facility, maybe even execute you if they decide this counts as espionage. What can we do? Ji-ho asked, his face pale. Do-hyun looked at both of them. Then he pulled something from his pocket. A small data chip. This contains pictures of all the star maps, every room, every wall, every ceiling. I've been documenting your work for months. He handed the chip to Tae-ho. Hide this. When they take your stars, they won't take your knowledge. Why would you do this? Tae-ho asked, holding the small chip like it was a precious jewel. Do-hyun's stern face softened slightly. Because some things shouldn't be forgotten. The old ways, the star paths. The knowledge that lives in people, not machines. He turned to go, then stopped. My grandfather would have understood. After Do-hyun left, Tae-ho and Ji-ho sat in silence. The glowing stars on their walls seemed dimmer somehow, as if they already knew their fate. One night, Ji-ho finally said, We have one night left with the stars. What do you want to do? Tae-ho looked at the walls, at the ceiling, at the patterns he had recreated from memory. The sky of Hanul, the map of home. I want to add one more constellation, he said. One that never existed before. That final night, Tae-ho worked quickly. In the center of his cell, on the wall facing the door, he painted a new constellation. It was not from Hanul. It was not from any world. It came from his mind alone. The new constellation had 17 stars arranged in a circle. At its center was a bright star made from the rare red mineral that glowed like the harvest star of Hanul. Around this central star, the other 16 formed a pattern like rays of light spreading outward. What is it? Ji-ho asked as he watched. The flame of memory, Tae-ho said. One star for each world we know was destroyed by the Empire. At the center is Hanul. The news spread quickly through the prison. In their last night with the stars, prisoners came to see the new constellation. They stood in silence before it. Some cried. Some placed their hands on the wall, as if touching the stars might connect them to their lost homes. Hyun-woo, the teacher, looked at it and nodded. We will remember, he said. Even when the walls are blank again, we will remember. All through the night, prisoners visited the star rooms. They walked through the three-dimensional map one last time. They lay on their backs in the hallways, looking up at the ceiling galaxies. They said goodbye to the stars that had given them comfort for a year. Tae-ho did not sleep. He sat in his cell, looking at the walls that would soon be empty again. The data chip Do-hyun had given him was hidden in a crack in the floor beneath his bed. The images were safe, but it wasn't the same as seeing the real stars glowing in the darkness. Morning came. Guards entered the cell blocks with buckets of white paint and brushes. Prisoners were ordered to stay in their cells while work crews painted over the stars. Tae-ho and Ji-ho sat on their beds, watching as guards approached their cell. The door opened. 2 guards entered, followed by a woman in an expensive uniform. It was the same officer who had been with the inspection team. Prisoner 847, she said, looking at Tae-ho, the Skywatcher from Hanul. Tae-ho stood up. Yes. You are the one who started this. She gestured at the star-covered walls. You will come with me. Ji-ho stood up too. Where are you taking him? The officer ignored him. Bring your things. You are being transferred. Tae-ho had few possessions. A few books from the library, extra clothes. He packed them in a small bag. As he did, he glanced at Ji-ho, then at the floor beneath his bed where the data chip was hidden. Ji-ho gave a small nod. He understood. He would keep the chip safe. The guards led Tae-ho out of the cell. As they walked down the hallway, Tae-ho looked up one last time at the ceiling of stars. Workers on ladders were already painting over some sections. White paint covered the constellations, erasing them from view. In the main hall, other prisoners watched as Taiho was led out. They stood in silence, hands at their sides. But as he passed, each one touched their fingers to their forehead in a small salute. A Skywatcher's greeting from Hanul, Supervisor Do-hyun stood by the exit doors. His face was blank, showing no emotion. But as Taiho passed, he too touched his fingers to his forehead. The gesture was quick, almost invisible. But Taiho saw it. The officer took Taiho to a small room with a metal table and 2 chairs. She sat on one side. Taiho sat on the other. 2 guards stood at the door. "I am Commander Yuna of Meridian Intelligence," the officer said. "Do you know why you are here?" "Because of the stars," Taiho said. "Not just stars. Information. Hidden. In plain sight." Commander Yuna leaned forward. "Your star maps contain classified navigation routes, military installations, resource locations, things only senior officers should know. They are just the skies as seen from different worlds," Taiho said. "Exactly. Skies that, when combined, reveal patterns the Empire has tried to keep secret." She studied Taiho's face. "How did you do it? You were just a primitive skywatcher from a farming planet." The word primitive stung, but Taiho kept his face calm. "We were not primitive. We were keepers of knowledge. Old knowledge. The kind that lives in people, not machines." "Knowledge can be dangerous," Commander Yuna said, "especially when shared." "Is that why you burned my world? Because our knowledge was dangerous?" The commander did not answer directly. Hanul was destroyed because it refused to join the Empire. All worlds must contribute to the greater good. By giving up their resources, their freedom, their way of life. By joining something larger than themselves. Commander Yuna stood up. "Your star maps have been destroyed. The knowledge they contained is once again secure, but we must be certain that knowledge doesn't spread." Taiho knew what was coming. Execution, or a lifetime in a higher security prison. No more library, no more stars, just darkness. However, the commander continued. "There is another option." This surprised Taiho. "What option?" "Work for us. Use your knowledge of stars to help the Empire. Your skills are rare. Most navigators depend on computers now. Few can read the sky as you can." It was the last thing Taiho expected. "You want me to help the Empire that destroyed my world? I want you to survive. To use your gifts. To be more than a prisoner painting stars on a wall." Taiho was about to refuse when an alarm sounded. Red lights flashed in the hallway outside. The guards at the door looked at each other in confusion. Commander Yuna's communication device beeped. She answered it. Her face darkened as she listened. "What do you mean? Communications are down?" she demanded. "Fix it." The alarm continued to sound. More alarms joined it from other parts of the prison. The guards at the door shifted nervously. "Stay here," Commander Yuna ordered Taiho. "Guards, watch him." She left the room. The guards remained, at the door, hands on their weapons, eyes on Taiho. Minutes passed. The alarms kept ringing. Shouts came from distant parts of the prison, then running footsteps in the hallway. The door burst open. Supervisor Do-hyun stood there, breathing hard. "We need to move, now." The guards raised their weapons, but they were too slow. Do-hyun stunned them both with his own weapon before they could fire. "What's happening?" Taiho asked as Do-hyun pulled him out of the room. "Rebellion, not just here, everywhere, 17 worlds all at once." Do-hyun led him down a side hallway away from the sounds of fighting. "The data chip I gave you, it wasn't just pictures of stars." "What was it?" "The final piece of a plan. The star maps showed Imperial weaknesses, patrol routes, base locations. The Resistance needed that information." They reached a service door that led outside. For the first time in over a year, Taiho stepped out of the prison. The air was thin and cold. The sky above was black space, filled with stars. Real stars. A small ship waited nearby. Its engines were running. The door was open. "That's your way out," Do-hyun said. They're waiting for you. Taeho looked at the ship, then back at Do-hyun. You were with the resistance all along? Do-hyun nodded. My grandfather wasn't just from an outer world. He was one of the first to fight back against the Empire. I joined the prison service to help. From within. What about the others? Jiho, Hyunwoo? They're leading the prison uprising. Most of the guards have joined them. The ones who were born on outer worlds. The ones who learned to see the stars again through your maps. In the distance, more alarms sounded. Lights flashed on the prison walls. The sound of ships taking off came from the main landing area. Why was I so important? Taeho asked. Why risk everything for one sky watcher? Because you showed us how to remember, Do-hyun said. How to keep knowledge alive. How to see patterns that others miss. He pushed Taeho toward the waiting ship. Now go. There's a place for you with the resistance. They need people who can navigate by the stars alone. People the Empire can't track. Taeho took a few steps toward the ship, then stopped. He looked up at the stars overhead. Somewhere among them was where Hanul had been, perhaps where it would be again someday. The new constellation, he said. The flame of memory. 17 stars. 17 worlds that resisted. Do-hyun nodded. 17 worlds now rising up together. You knew. We hoped. The stars aligned. Literally. Do-hyun gave a small smile, then grew serious again. Now go. Before they regroup, Taeho ran to the ship. Inside, a pilot was waiting. The door closed behind him as he strapped into a seat. The ship lifted off, rising quickly into the darkness. Through the window, Taeho watched Shadowhold grow smaller below them. The prison that had been his home for over a year. The place where he had painted the stars back one by one on a prison wall. As the ship turned, a new view appeared. A massive gas giant planet filled half the sky, and circling it were other ships, dozens of them, hundreds, a fleet gathered from many worlds. Welcome to the Resistance, Skywatcher, the pilot said. We've been waiting for you. The ship accelerated, joining the fleet. Together, they moved into formation. From a distance, Taeho realized they would look like stars themselves. A new constellation moving through space. Above them, the real stars, shone unchanged. The same stars that had watched over Hanul. The same stars that had guided farmers for generations. The same stars that had burned bright in Taeho's memory, even when his world burned beneath them. Those stars would guide them, now, to freedom, to hope, to a future where all worlds could look up at the night sky and remember who they were.